Hey guys, Miles Shank here, and today I want to talk about rehoused lenses, specifically Canon FD rehoused lenses. Just have been getting some questions when I've been posting some things on social media, and people have been asking me like, what is a rehoused lens? Why do you rehouse them? How do you rehouse them? So let's just jump into it. So like I just said, here we have three Canon FD lenses. Now there's a whole set ranging from like 14 to 135, and then there are some oddball lenses that go 300, 500 millimeter, like some like pretty huge lenses actually. There's actually like zoom lenses, but these are still lenses. So these are the originals. These are like 1970s glass. The FDs, you can trace them back to what they call rangefinder lenses, and that is where this is an SLR camera, so this is non-digital. Now an SLR is like a single lens reflex, so you're seeing the image that the lens sees through here because of like a little like prism mirror up here. Now the rangefinder cameras are the ones where like you're looking through like a little window here, but you're not actually seeing what's, your lens is actually seeing. So without getting too much into the history of that, basically lenses have improved from the 50s and 60s and 70s and the 80s now like up into the 90s, and now you have like Arri and every company really making just like a perfect lens that doesn't flare, that doesn't bloom, that controls light. But the problem is a lot of DPs want the old stuff, and so the interesting thing is the lenses were made differently back before there were restrictions on the amount of thorium that was put in glass. And now thorium is like that radioactive stuff, and basically it made the glass transmit light better, like more efficiently essentially. And later we learned about radioactivity and how it's not healthy for you. So the amount of thorium that is actually in a lens is not that bad. Like the Lomo round fronts that I have quite a bit because the optics are huge on those. So you're not really gonna notice any health issues from those unless you're like sleeping at night, putting the lens beside your pillow. Essentially what it comes down to is like the coatings that are on the optics and the actual optics themselves. And so you've probably heard of like Canon K35s. Now those are essentially like a home mortgage to buy. So they're pretty much rental only. I don't know anybody that personally owns a set of those, but they are a fascinating lens. They're beautiful, they look great. And they are what made the Canon FDs popular because you basically have so many sets of K35s in the world. The K35 was essentially like Canon's big cinema lens. Like the movie Alien was shot on it. Just a lot of movies have been filmed on the K35 lens. The issue is you only have so many sets in the world, so when they start breaking, optics get scratched, the lens gets dropped, they need to be repaired. And so essentially they would take optics from FD lenses to repair the K35s. So that was like, okay, if it's good enough to repair, is it good enough to replace? This set is one of my favorite lens rehousing companies. I think one of the best in the industry is True Lens Services in the United Kingdom. So TLS, that's what the little, if you ever see that on lenses. There's other fantastic lens companies out there like White Point does a fantastic job on rehousing. But essentially here we have the 35 millimeter FD. Now this one is kind of like, I'm kind of lying to you a little bit here because this one is the F2 model, and the rest of the set, this is like, I think it's an F1.2, yeah. So the 55 is a 1.2, and the 85L is a 1.2 as well. So the f-stop that you're used to with still lenses, if you're watching this, I'm assuming you're coming from like the stills world and you don't like, T-stop and f-stop. Real quick, f-stop is basically like how much light the lens is like taking in and letting the camera see. The T-stop is measured by how much light is like exiting the rear of the lens. And I don't exactly know where or when or how, but essentially a cinema camera will measure T-stop, which is why all these have like a little T marker and then like 1.3. So the f-stop will always be a little bit lower. because it's telling you how much light's coming into the lens, and the t-stop is showing you how much is actually coming and hitting your sensor. I think it's just kind of one of those, like, it's always been, always will be kind of things. But essentially, this is in a nutshell, like, you would take the optics from this lens, and you can cine-mod, like do close. There's some great companies out there making, you know, the gears for your focus ring and your aperture ring. The tough thing is with those, you are manually focusing your lens. And you know, like, as you get out towards infinity, you might throw the lens farther to get that little bit of focus distance. Where if you're all the way in macro, you know, a little like eighth twist of a lens might be a few feet of focusing distance. Now that would drive a focus puller crazy, like as you're trying to like pull focus, because they want a nice steady twist at the dial to get a pretty consistent like pull of how many feet or meters they have to pull. So they have essentially, TLS has essentially engineered a whole new housing for those optics. So the cine-mod is always a cheaper route, and you can get like, you know, adapter rings on here. I even have one for this that goes, I don't know what that is, like a 72 millimeter screw-on thread, and it can take it to like a 114, so that you could put like a clamp on matte box on a little easier. And you can get them declicked. So a declick is essentially that sound, like when I'm changing the f-stop from, you know, 1.2 to like an 8. I don't know if you've ever used these lenses, but when you do, like, your actual image will shift light, dark, 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 like stopping down. So you declick a lens to essentially make the aperture flow very smoothly and close without having that incremental, you know, stop down. So that alone is pretty wild, and it's fascinating, the engineering that goes into these lenses, because one, they're like built like tanks, they're so solid. But two, what I was saying about the focus distance, you can go from like minimum and then like throw a few feet, and it might actually be like a 180-degree turn of the lens. And this lens, I think, is like a 270-degree rotation. So, you know, if you're hand holding it, you might hate that, because you're like having to crank the lens a bunch, like literally like almost an entire rotation around to get from minimum to infinity. But that's fine, because it wasn't intended to be used by hand. As you see, it has teeth, so it was intended to put onto like a cinema camera, have your geared motor on it, or, you know, if somebody can pull with like a little hand focus motor. Essentially, it's made for like a team of people to use. Now, I use these solo sometimes, depends on the project. It's not great to use them solo, but they are nice to use in like a team of people where, you know, your second AC might be helping swap a lens. You might, hopefully, that's another great thing. If you're cine-modding lenses, you'll probably have to like move the motor, take the lens off, and then put a new lens on, and it might have different like gearing, or at least like the gear might be, you know, up here, and then on the next lens, when you take it and put it on your camera, your gear might have to come back a little bit. So all of those are like seconds, really, but they can add up time like throughout the day on set. So the great thing about like these TLS lenses, at least all the TLS lenses that I've used and had, their like focus gears are always in the same, and their aperture rings are like always in the same. So that's amazing, because you can just put your motor on and then like swap your lens, and even if it's like a whole different focal length, boom, you still have motors all lined up. So it's nice that you don't have to like even move your motor up, swap the lens, and then put it down. You can, most of the time, my ACs are pretty great, but they can literally just like remove it, and the teeth will just like line right up. So that's kind of a long-winded explanation. Essentially, these optics within the 85 and the 55 are literally all the same. Actually, this one has a little FD to RF mount, because I use it on the Komodo sometimes. And I think you can get an RF mount for the Arri, I think. So technically you could probably use that as well. A lot of these lenses too, especially the early lenses, they'll actually increase the amount of like blades. So if you ever look into a lens, you'll see like the blades are actually like kind of overlapping, and that's your aperture when it opens and closes. So the iris blades on my unhoused FD are obviously not even declicked. They kind of look more stop signy when you start closing them down. So the bokeh behind somebody when I'm filming on these will kind of like start taking on that stop sign shape as well. So the Cooke lenses that I often love using, a lot of those, like the S4s, actually will take on like what they call like a buzzsaw, where like the blades, the pattern that they overlap in, they kind of like tooth like around the edge, and it kind of gives it like a little buzzsaw look. So TLS really just rounds them out, makes them all circular. So no matter what T-stop or F-stop you're shooting at, it's just like a round bokeh. So going back to the 35, I said I was kind of fibbing a bit about this one because TLS has found a really cool solution. So this is a T1.3, T1.3. So many of the FDs are just very fast lenses. But the 35s and many of the wide angle lenses, 28, 24, especially the 14 and all that, like earlier lenses, like the Canon FD17, I think is like a f-stop 4. Like it's really not a fast lens. But TLS has been making some incredible lenses called FDX. And essentially they're taking optics from other lenses that have very similar lens coatings, very similar flares, and just warmth. Like the image overall matches the FDs really, really well. And they actually found some Minolta glass that matches really, really well to the rest of the FD set. So they've been able to make this one from an F2, which would be like a T 2.1 or 2.2. They make this a T 1.6 by using Minolta glass. And it matches really, really well. I mean, the flare pattern is off a little bit, but like only a true DP would notice the flares are a little bit different. So I hope you found this video helpful. I made it in response to a few people that I was like direct messaging back super lengthy replies and getting back more questions, which is cool. Like I love learning and I love people that are hungry to know. And I just kept kind of answering like, oh, so why would I buy this lens for a couple $100s on eBay and then spend so much money to get them rehoused? And it's basically because I want to use them in the field. Like I have directors and producers and clients who just love the look that I'm getting with these. And I really like the look of the different lenses, all kinds of different lenses. But in this season, I'm loving the FDs because they do have full frame coverage all across the like whole set of lenses. And yeah, so thanks for watching.